back on the job. The Catholic chaplain for the House of Representatives is reinstated after resigning last month. We have reaction. White House advisor. Part 2 of our interview with Kellyanne Conway, counselor to the president and a staunch Catholic. Human Rights Watch. The State Department makes a big change to its annual report. Why pro-lifers are pleased. And building up a culture of life. We preview a big day in the fight for the unborn in England. On EWTN News Nightly for Friday, May 4th, 2018. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you for joining us for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Wyatt Goolsby, in for Lauren Ashburn. Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds says she will sign the so-called heartbeat bill, banning most abortions once a fetal heartbeat is detected around 6 weeks of pregnancy. The Republican governor says she's planning to sign the bill this afternoon. The state legislature approved the measure earlier in the week. The signing is setting the stage up for a lengthy court challenge. The Iowa affiliates of Planned Parenthood and the ACLU warn it will sue the governor. Similar legislation passed in other states didn't go into effect after they were challenged in court over their constitutionality. President Trump says the time and place for is set for his landmark meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, but he stopped short of revealing those details. The president is also suggesting his new personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, may have stepped out of line.
So Rudy knows it's a witch hunt. He started yesterday. He'll get his facts straight.
Giuliani admitted Wednesday that the president repaid the hush money his attorney gave an adult film star. Stormy Daniels claims she had an affair with Trump in 2006. The president denies the affair and says the money was given to Daniels to prevent her from spreading lies. President Trump steps back into the gun control debate today during a trip to Texas. He spoke at the National Rifle Association Forum in Dallas. Trump calls the NRA a truly great organization that loves this country.
Your Second Amendment rights are under siege, but they will never, ever be under siege as long as I'm your president.
President Trump and other Republicans face a backlash over their refusal to support more gun control legislation. Protesters want to see a ban on assault-style rifles like the one used to kill students at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. Kellyanne Conway, a longtime pro-life advocate, says President Trump is committed to upholding pro-life policies. White House correspondent Mark Irons brings us more of his one-on-one interview with the counselor to the president.
I want to ask you one concern for Catholics is the funding of Planned Parenthood. Will the administration cut Title X family planning funds that go to abortion providers?
During the campaign, the president could not have been more explicit on this issue. There are many different clips that people have resurrected recently showing the president in no uncertain terms equivocally standing up for life and standing against taxpayer funding of abortion. We all know that Planned Parenthood gets $500 million a year in government funding and turns around and funds Democratic campaigns. They support only pro-abortion candidates. Some estimates show $60 million in spending on behalf of Hillary Clinton's presidential race against President Trump.
Well, from Title X, $50 to $60 million going to Planned Parenthood. Is the administration going to fight to cut those Title X funds going?
I believe the president will do the right thing here, and Secretary Azar at Health and Human Services, Vice President Pence, staffers like me are very loud voices in this regard. And this president also recognizes that when you're taking the money, see, there's this ridiculous misnomer you're defunding Planned Parenthood. No, you're restoring funding to qualified women health centers that do not perform abortion and perform vital health services to women like mammograms, which Planned Parenthood does not. The president of Planned Parenthood was forced under oath to testify as such and answer that question squarely for once a couple years ago when she and her group were enmeshed in a baby fetal tissue organ harvesting scandal. So Planned Parenthood standing up and saying we provide great health services to women. They furnish about 1 in 3 abortions in this country. It is a huge profit center for them. And when you look at the women's health centers around the country, you see that for every one Planned Parenthood facility, you're up to about 16 to 20 women's health centers. They provide vital services And more to the point, you look at somewhere like Maine, where Senator Susan Collins obviously represents, there are four, count them on one hand, 4 Planned Parenthood centers in all of Maine. There are 172 qualified women health centers. So you tell me which ones can service women better.
Well, I want to ask, the president signed the omnibus spending bill, which ultimately still gave funds to Planned Parenthood. Will he sign another bill that ultimately gives funds to Planned
Was
Parenthood?
hugely disappointing, including to the president, to learn that.
On the Planned Parenthood front?
Yeah, well, yes, the president, what he said in the diplomatic room when he signed the bill in was that I'm doing this because the military needs the $700 billion. I like some other aspects. The president said like the $4 billion in school safety.
He did mention Planned
$6
Parenthood,
billion
there
for
was
opioids.
frustration with that.
And he said, yes, he has mentioned it, and he has said, you know, I said I wasn't going to go for that again, and here we are giving them another $500
So
billion.
he won't sign another bill that funds Planned Parenthood?
The president has made very clear that he wants legislation put on his desk that mirrors his priorities and the priorities of dozens of other folks on Capitol Hill who even bothered to vote for the omnibus. You're talking about liberal Democrats who don't even vote to fund the government. In fact, they shut it down at the beginning of this year, you recall, and if you don't recall, people should be reminded of it. So we anticipate a rescissions package will be coming forward. If you look at that, plus you hear the president loudly and clearly last month in the diplomatic room saying, I'm signing this because Secretary Mattis and others have told me our troops need this. We know that they've been under-resourced and under-respected for so long. And he said, don't even bother sending me another package like this again. And part of that is the Planned Parenthood piece.
Thank you, Mark, for that interview. The House of Representatives chaplain, Father Patrick Conroy, wins back his job 2.5 weeks after being forced to resign. And the drama isn't over. While some Catholics question Conroy's fidelity to church teaching, others are accusing one of Speaker Paul Ryan's staffers of being anti-Catholic. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi reports. Good evening, Jason.
Good evening, Wyatt. Father Conroy took back his resignation, as we reported last night. Speaker Ryan then changed his mind and now says Conroy can stay. The priest's lawyer tells me he's surprised at how quickly Ryan changed course.
Father Pat wanted to get his job back. He loves that job, and it's a perfect fit for him. And at the pinnacle of his career, I think it's very appropriate that he's there and that he ride off into the sunset on his terms at that position.
Attorney Daniel Marchese is representing the priest. They met while Marchese was a student at Georgetown. Yesterday, the Jesuit wrote to Speaker Ryan saying, I have never been disciplined nor reprimanded, nor have I ever heard a complaint about my ministry during my time as House chaplain. Speaker Ryan last month forced Conroy to resign. Some Catholics supported Ryan, questioning the chaplain's orthodoxy and his views expressed in an online video.
We have a theology on all this stuff, and the answer is gays can never engage in this and can never be married. But that's a theology that goes back centuries.
Now Speaker Ryan is taking back Father Conroy and explaining his actions. In a statement, he says, my original decision was made in what I believe to be the best interest of this institution. Catholic Congressman Walter Jones tells me he's happy the chaplain will stay.
We've got a victory. Members of Congress worked together to let the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, know that we were very, very upset and dissatisfied with his attack on the chaplain. When I found out that he was going to be reinstated, it was like a prayer answered.
Now, that's not the end of the story. Conroy claims when Speaker Ryan's Chief of Staff, Jonathan Burks, ordered him to resign, he said, quote, something like, maybe it's time that we had a chaplain that wasn't a Catholic. I just spoke with Bill Donahue of the Catholic League. He wants Chief of Staff Burks fired for anti-Catholic bigotry. But Burks says he strongly disagrees with Father Conroy's recollection. Wyatt?
Correspondent Jason Calvi covering the story all week from Capitol Hill. Thanks, Jason. A volcanic curtain of fire in Hawaii forces nearly 1,500 people to evacuate. A day after Hawaii's Kilauea volcano erupted, authorities detect high levels of sulfur gas, which could cause burns and breathing problems. Hawaii's governor activated the National Guard to help with evacuations and provide security. No immediate injuries have been reported. 6 more people have died in massive flooding in Kenya. Groups are now asking for assistance in providing shelter, food, and medical assistance to the area. More than 240,000 people have been displaced in the heavy seasonal flooding. Catholic bishops in Nicaragua are calling for an urgent review of the country's political system. Their appeal comes after a week of protests left at least 38 people dead. The demonstrations erupted last month when the government announced reforms to Social Security. The Catholic Church is acting as a mediator between members of civil society and President Daniel Ortega's government. A state in northern India passes an anti-conversion law. According to a Vatican news report, the law says citizens must ask the government for permission 1 month before any religious conversion takes place. A Catholic bishop in the state says the law is discriminatory and targets Christians and other religious minorities. Pope Francis is asking his envoy to the Knights of Malta to remain on the job. The move sidelines one of the Pope's critics. The Vatican has released a letter saying the Holy Father wants Monsignor Becciu to continue as his delegate and exclusive spokesman for the group. He replaced Cardinal Raymond Burke, who has been critical of Francis. The Knights are a 900-year-old lay religious order. They elected a new leader for life earlier this week. The Vatican has declined to rule on a dispute among German bishops whether non-Catholic spouses can receive communion. It's asking the bishops to work it out among themselves. A high-ranking German cardinal who used to run the Vatican's doctrine office is weighing in.
I hope that more bishops will elevate their voices and to do their duty. Bishops and cardinals are not here to make presentations of their pretty clothes. No?
The Vatican is urging the German bishops to find a unanimous solution in the spirit of unity. Cardinal Mueller says he does not believe that is possible. Edward Penton, Rome correspondent for EWTN's National Catholic Register, joins us. Edward, the teaching of the Church is clear. If you're not Catholic, you can't receive communion in the Catholic Church, regardless of who your spouse is. Why is this even an issue in Germany?
Well, there are a lot of mixed marriages, Wyatt, in Germany. Lots of it's a Lutheran Protestant country primarily, so there are lots of mixed marriages. A lot of Lutheran spouses who would like to receive communion with their other half. But there's also pressure being put on bishops because of this, on the church, because of the secularized nature of German society, and the bishops have rather succumbed to it in Germany. They don't, as critics say, they don't really understand that the Eucharist is a sacrament of unity, and they don't really understand that.
So then why is the Vatican passing this proposal back to the bishops as opposed to dealing with it directly?
Well, this is to do with Pope Francis's push for decentralization. He said in Evangelii Gaudium, his apostolic exhortation in 2013, that he wants to give more doctrinal authority to the bishops' conferences, and this is very much in keeping with that vision that he has.
So then how is the Vatican's decision to do that being viewed by both parties within the German Bishops' Conference, those who are for and those who are against it?
Well, really disappointment on all sides. As far as the German bishops are concerned, they were hoping that the Pope would give his full stamp of approval. That didn't happen. It was also, the talks were held in the Vatican's Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, so it's a doctrinal issue. They said it was a pastoral one. And for the 7 bishops who are criticizing this, they were hoping that it would be outright rejected by the Pope, and it wasn't. And they say that the Pope, because he hasn't done that, has abnegated his responsibility as Peter.
So then, Edward, what are the implications of this outcome for the universal church?
Well, I think what we're going to see, White, is more doctrinal authority being given over to bishops' conferences. That people say, well, that might undermine aspects of doctrine like the sacraments, but proponents say that it's actually a good thing that it tailors doctrine to regional areas and that it's better applied in that way. But we're just going to have to see how this pans out and whether there are positive things or negative things to come from it.
Well, I know it's an issue that people are going to continue to debate. Edward Penton, Rome correspondent for EWTN's National Catholic Register, thanks so much.
Thank you, Wyatt.
And coming up, the pro-life movement faces a setback after lawmakers make a move in one U.S. state. But there is good news for pro-lifers coming out of the nation's capital. Welcome back. I'm Wyatt Goolsby, in for Lauren Ashburn. Kansas and Oklahoma approve laws to protect faith-based adoption agencies from placing children with same-sex couples. The Republican-controlled legislature in Kansas passed their bill this morning. Supporters say it protects a group's right to live out their religious beliefs, but critics contend the laws are an attack on gay rights. An abortion ban in South Carolina fails in a late-night vote. 5 Republicans joined Democrats to sink the bill after an hours-long filibuster. The measure would have allowed abortions only in cases of rape, incest, or risk of the mother's life. South Carolina's governor says he would have signed it. Pro-life Americans are praising a decision by the State Department to remove the term reproductive rights from its annual human rights report. Senior officials are deflecting critics, saying it's not an attack on women.
We went back to the term that's used in the U.S. statute that requires the human rights report, which is coerced family planning, namely coerced abortion or involuntary sterilization.
The State Department started using the term reproductive rights 6 years ago during the Obama presidency. Many pro-lifers dislike the term, saying it's another way of saying destroying innocent human life in the womb. Jeannie Mancini, the president of the March for Life, joins us now with more on this. Jeannie, why is the phrase coercion in population control better than the term reproductive rights?
Well, because it's accurate. There is no such thing as reproductive rights, and the truth of the matter is that there is coerced and forced abortion around the world. We can consider China, that has a two-child policy, and if women get pregnant after having 1 or 2 children, they're forced to have abortions. There's just horrific stories coming out of that. And then, of course, there's gendercide in different Asian countries around the world, and sometimes even here in the United States. Abortions happen just simply because a baby is a girl, because of her gender, or in some cases because it's a boy. And that happens in a coerced fashion in certain countries around the world. And so that's the real human rights abuse.
So then why do you think it was so important that the State Department removed this language, reproductive rights, this term, from the annual human rights report?
Well, the question is, why was it ever even in there to begin with? Because it's not an international human right. Consider the fact that many of these countries being looked at in this report have abortion illegal in their countries, and there's never been an international treaty that I'm aware of that includes abortion and access to abortion as a human right. Really, abortion is a human rights abuse if we're going to get right down to it. But so it's very important that the State Department is taking this out, because it's really only been under the pressure, really, of the abortion lobby that other administrations have included that language erroneously.
Now, Amnesty International Human Rights Group says this new language devalues women's rights. How do you respond to them and to the other critics?
You know, it's really sad. Amnesty has got some great things that they're for, but abortion is not good for women, and abortion hurts women both physiologically and psychologically. I love the phrase from Mother Teresa, Saint Teresa of Calcutta: abortion is profoundly anti-women. All of the mothers and half of the children are victims to it, and all of the mothers and half of the babies are women. And the truth of the matter is that it couldn't be further from what Amnesty International is saying. Being pro-life is pro-woman, and I think that unfortunately Amnesty International too has really caved to the pressure of the abortion lobby, and in doing so is doing a profound disservice to women around the world.
Well, it's so nice to hear from you and other pro-lifers who continue to push on this important issue so much, and obviously your response to the State Department's changing in their language as well. Jeannie Mancini, president of the March for Life, thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Up next, the ideal bishop according to Pope Francis. And we preview a big day for the pro-life movement in England.
Il popolo di Dio sa quando il pastore è pastore.
Pope Francis says a good bishop is a shepherd, staying close to his flock and watching over it. The Holy Father also says a true church leader is involved with his flock and knows the name of his sheep. Welcome back. I'm Wyatt Goolsby, in for Lauren Ashburn. A Vatican news agency reports more than 200 children forced to become soldiers in South Sudan have been released. But a UN group says 19,000 children in the war-torn country are still working with armed groups. The civil war in South Sudan has been raging for 5 years. Thousands are expected to turn out for tomorrow's March for Life UK in London. Pro-life groups will gather to remember the millions of unborn babies lost in the 50 years since abortion became legal there in 1967. Caroline Farrow, EWTN contributor, joins us now with more on this from London. Caroline, the U.S. March for Life has been taking place for over 4 decades. Give us a sense of what the UK version is like, what's on deck.
Okay, so the UK version is a lot smaller than the US version, and it's been going for about 20 years or so. It's previously been held in Birmingham, in the centre of the UK, but this year it's moving to London, and it's going to consist of it's a two-part event. So in the morning there's going to be workshops and speeches and testimonies, and then it's going to move outside to the Houses of Parliament, outside the Houses of Commons. You know, that very famous scene with Big Ben as a backdrop, and it's going to sort of walk through London for 45 minutes, and then it's going to assemble outside the Houses of Parliament, where we'll hear some speakers, some testimony, and then we'll have a closing prayer.
Well, let's expand on that a little bit, because you mentioned that the march previously was held in Birmingham, England. What is the significance of the fact that it is in London, there next to Parliament?
It's very significant because this year is the 50th anniversary of the enactment of the Abortion Act. So in the UK now we've had 50 years of legal abortion, and actually it's really important for the pro-life movement in the UK to actually show that we are still here, we are a voice, we are still advocating for the unborn. And we've actually had a bit of a bonus at the last minute. So the American singer Joy Villa, who you may be aware of, she attended the Grammy Award ceremony wearing a pro-life dress with an unborn baby and a rainbow. Now, she reached out to me on Twitter the other day, and she saw I was going to be at March for Life, and she said, "Hey Caroline, I'd like to join." So this is amazing for us. We've now got Joy Villa coming along to join our speakers and to march with us, which is a huge encouragement for the UK.
Well, congratulations to that. You know, the abortion debate is a lively and often contentious one here in the U.S. What is the debate like in the UK?
It's equally contentious, but actually the pro-life voice is very minimised by the media, by everyone, by media, politics. You know, abortion is now taken, unfortunately, as being a right and something that shouldn't even be questioned. So we've seen in the UK just 2 weeks ago, we've seen the imposition of buffer zones outside an abortion centre in London, which means that it's illegal for anybody to pray outside of there. It's illegal for anybody to offer leaflets, to offer any sort of help to women in crisis pregnancy. So they've outlawed sidewalk counselling, as you know it. But at the moment, there's a challenge going through the courts to try and get that overturned. But the way that abortion is framed in the media is very much, this is a right, this is something that all women should have. And anybody who dissents from that view, anybody who tries to advocate for the right to life, is painted as being some kind of bizarre and weird extremist. So what we're trying to do, I think, with the March for Life is show that there's going to be lots of young people, lots of young families, that we are a friendly, welcoming, open voice that just wants the basic human right to life for everybody.
And I'm sure so many there in the UK and around the world will be praying for y'all's March for Life. Caroline Farrow, EWTN contributor, joining us from London. Thanks so much for telling us about it.
Thank you.
And finally tonight, the Holy Father welcomes new Swiss guards and their family members to the Vatican.
Vivere con coerenza la fede cattolica.
The Pope expressed his hope that the soldiers' service to the Holy See will strengthen their faith. This Sunday, the 33 new recruits will be officially sworn in. The Swiss Guard has protected the Holy Father since the 16th century. And of course, our team here at EWTN News Nightly regularly sees a Swiss Guard member, sort of. Our executive producer, Susie Pinto, keeps this little guy on her desk every day, so we get to see his garb. This one actually may be an antique. Susie had lived and worked in Rome for many years. So we always know that the Swiss Guard are watching. And Vatican correspondent Juliet Lindley will have more on the story about these young men who take an oath of loyalty to protect the Holy Father on Monday. And with that, we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Wyatt Goolsby. We'll be back on Monday with more news from a Catholic perspective. Good night, and God bless.